it's very evident that the left's virtues are what we consider to be vices, and what we consider to be vices are all a series of virtues to them. And so it's very difficult. It puts the Conservative, I think, at a significant disadvantage, because what the Conservative promises is prosperity and satisfaction. He is promising a long, overarching goal that is not going to be immediately realized. And so it requires a certain barrier to entry, a certain disposition, to be able to really comprehend and say, oh no, actually, if I put in 10 years work now, then at the end of that, I actually have a wonderful life. I have a wife, I have children, I have a house, I have a business. And that, I mean, to me, phenomenally appealing prospect. But I do also personally know a bunch of people to whom, I mean, that's not even slightly appealing. And so actually free government handouts and the ability to smoke marijuana on every street corner and to be bailed out of every bad decision you ever make and never really take responsibility for yourself. I'm worried that, and have that lionized as a virtue in and of itself, gluttony, sloth, envy, greed, all of these things. It's not that I agree with it, but I can see that a lot of people find it kind of irresistible. And I'm worried about that kind of, like we're trying to catch water between our hands, and we might have a small amount left on our palms, but you see what I'm saying, right?
Absolutely. I mean, I think we have to make positive moral arguments. Frederick Bastiat, the economist, points out that if it's wrong for me to steal your money, your money personally, it's just as wrong for the government to steal somebody else's money and give it to another person. And what they do is they have this really strange argument, which is, yes, but you have so much. I don't understand why at some point my so much becomes yours. I don't understand why that happens. You transform charity, which is ennobling both to the giver and the receiver in a strange way. You transform that into robbery, essentially. Why am I taking money from Jeff Bezos and giving it to someone else, no matter how much money Jeff Bezos has? I mean, I keep hearing Joe Biden in that creepy whisper he has saying you have to pay your fair share. You have to pay your fair share. My two questions of that: one is fair share of what? Because most of the things you do are absolutely absurd and useless and destructive. So that's the first thing. But the other is Thomas Sowell's point: is what is my fair share of someone else's money? It is zero. My fair share of Jeff Bezos's money is zero. Obviously, it helps if Jeff Bezos doesn't treat his workers like garbage, which he sometimes does.
I'm fine with regulation that prevents him from doing that. That's
exactly.
Regulate the hell out of Amazon.
That's right. That is exactly right. He has to be made to treat people like human beings. This is the other problem with libertarianism. We cannot let the powerful destroy the weak. That's not the way we're built, and it's not what we're here for. But once that's in place, the guy has the right to all the money in the world if he can make it. And so I just think that that's the argument that we're making. And we're afraid to make it. We're always afraid to make it because they cast us as plutocrats. The funny thing is, in America, at least, the right conservatives give far more money to charity than the left wing does at every level, because we believe that is ennobling to us. And the thing you said before about people working for 10 years and then building a good life, our point is that working is actually in and of itself rewarding. Of course, it feels better to sit around and eat cake and smoke dope, but working is in fact more rewarding and more ennobling and more human. A lot of these things, I feel there is room for regulation. One of the points Knowles makes is that politics, we always say that politics is downstream from culture, but sometimes culture is downstream from politics. And there's nothing wrong with saying, if you want, what's the line in Kipling? If you don't work, you starve. I think that is the way he puts it. But it's like that you have to work to make your living. You're not.
I think Lenin said the same thing, actually.
It's just an iron rule of life. You have to work. Nobody owes you anything. I don't owe you anything. Nobody owes you a thing. And that's really the problem that people don't point out enough about the left, is how mandatory they make everything. They say whatever isn't forbidden is mandatory. So it's not charity. It's not generosity to steal my money. It is not charity to give you money that they call it an entitlement. You're not entitled to it. And those are moral arguments that we have to start making fearlessly. I think that the domination of the culture at every level by the left has been our biggest enemy and our weakest point, and they've used it brilliantly.
They've been immensely aggressive in every
Yeah.
realm. But I agree with that argument. I mean, it's, it's very much the argument my dad made to me when I was young, and I was raised with it, and, I completely have internalized it. I agree with it. But I'm just thinking, okay, so if I was a 20-year-old now and no one had ever actually made that argument to me, what would I be thinking if someone did make that argument? And I would probably be thinking, well, hang on a second. The government is literally printing trillions of dollars in America and billions of pounds over here, and they are literally giving it away to whoever. They're giving it to Zelensky, they're giving it to, California's just giving it for drugs and the homeless. Like, the connection between my taxes or your taxes and the money that's printed seems to have become diffuse. And so so I hate to say that it feels that this has become a bit of an archaic argument that doesn't really connect with people anymore. And I think it's hard to pin down, especially when you look at the levels of debt and the levels of spending we have. Right. So it feels like a small town America argument. Right. And I very much agree with that, but I think that the way of looking at it has lost its impact. And so I've been thinking that conservatives maybe need to make another approach. But I mean, I'm not saying I have the better approach. I'm just looking at the way that the young people are now. And I just think we've allowed the left to raise them, frankly.
Yeah, I know. I agree with that, but I think that the argument is still good. It is the power of the way we make it and the way we make it, because one of the things that there's this real Catholic movement on the right here. I don't know if you have this, but
we don't have it here. But I follow the American one because I'm interested in American politics.
Yeah, it's very interesting, and one of the ways that I agree with it is the idea. What do they call it? The Benedict option, where you basically say we are going to build our lives like this, and we're going to essentially excuse ourselves from the life that you're building. And I think that is actually something that's going to happen here naturally. The best thing we have here is federalism. This idea that the states should have more power. There should be more power as it gets closer to you. So the states have power that the federal government doesn't have. And the left hates this. They hate the idea that people in Arkansas should be allowed to make their own decisions without people in New York telling them what to do. They just absolutely detest this. And
it's the total antithesis of everything about left-wing thought. How could they embrace it?
Yes, that's right. So, I mean, I had to leave California because California, which should be paradise, now looks like a zombie apocalypse. I mean, it genuinely looks like it looks like Nairobi. I mean, when I was in Nairobi many years ago, I thought, oh, we have no poverty like this in America. Now parts of Los Angeles look exactly like Nairobi. And so what they do doesn't work. And when you have places that are defended from what they do, you can build a culture that's better than theirs. And so when you have a culture of working people who are not on the dole, of people who actually get married and stay married, of people who worship together and live together in harmony, no matter what colors they are and all this, that is a really good advertisement for your argument. While the government, as you say, is spending money that they don't have, you should be only spending money that you do have, so that you can start to build people who will change that government. Again, it's a long haul to change the culture, and it's why conservatives don't want to do it, because they're always conservatives are very good at panic and despair. They're really good at, like, you pull this thread and the whole suit unravels. Therefore, I must defend this thread with my whole body. No, what you have to do is you have to make a suit for yourself and wear that suit until people say, gee, I want a suit like that. And I think that is something we actually are going to have to do for a new world, because we're no longer an agricultural community. We're no longer a community of small towns or a community of cities. I think, again, I'm actually quite hopeful about this, because what they do simply doesn't work, and economies that are based on debt collapse. I just would like to see us transform things before the collapse comes.
Well, that would be lovely, but I'm not very optimistic. Yeah. I mean,
well, it's a 50-50 shot, I think, at this point. Yeah.
But so I do think that you're on something here. Like I think the right does need to be more introspective about what it thinks a positive vision should be, right? As in, and one of the things I think the problem the right has, And I say this as someone who's like come to the right from an outside perspective, right? Because a lot of people on the right have been born and bred into this way of thinking and philosophy.
Yeah.
And I mean, I was when I was young, because my dad was very conservative, but I didn't really think about it, you know? And so I went off to university like many young people did, came out with a bunch of left-wing ideas and never really thought about them too hard either, because I just wasn't very interested in politics. And then started going, well, hang on a second. What do I actually think? Oh no, all of this is nonsense. So I feel like I'm kind of an outsider that's come to the party, and I'm like, right, okay, what is it then? And the right seems to actually not have a very good elevator pitch, right? It doesn't, it's actually like, oh, well, you know, if you do a lot of things for a very long time, then actually you get what I've got. It's like, okay, but you need to, like, the left has got a manifesto, you know, the left has got one page of this is what we're going to do and this is how we're going to win.
Yep.
And I'm not even thinking this is even necessarily possible for the right? If you're going to, you can't just inculcate someone into a tradition with a single page of text. But I do think the right needs ways of explaining to young men, especially, and I think primarily because I think once the young men start doing something productive, the women will follow because they're going to naturally want an upwardly facing man. But getting young men to actually take themselves seriously, I think, is the primary thing the right needs to do. And I'm not saying I have the way to do it either, but it's very concerning to me, you know, how like all of the institutions and the culture and just the young men I see are very unserious people. And I was when I was their age, and I was never encouraged not to be. What do you make of that?
Well, there's so much in it that it's hard to. I have to pick a place to start an
Feel
answer.
free. Yeah, I know. I was going on a bit there.
No, it's not that. It's that it is a big problem. One of the reasons the right doesn't have a manifesto like the left does is because our supreme respect for the individual. And the individual is not just a series of desires, of fleshly desires. He is actually an implanted personality. A little hard to explain this to an atheist in some ways, because I think that it actually, you know, there's this movement called Christian atheism with guys like Doug Murray, Love, and all this. I don't think it makes any sense. I think that actually you have to have a belief in something above nature in order to understand that you were made to be a person that you are not. There is no person who does not know that he is not the person he was made to be. Every single human being, adult human being on earth, understands that he has fallen short of who he is supposed to be. There is no person who doesn't know that in his heart of hearts.
Just as a quick aside on that, interestingly, First thing, I think that atheism is something that has been done to me, not something I've been chosen.
Okay.
No, and I think there are a lot of people who do feel this way, actually, because I grew up in the 90s, and so I feel it's kind of been inflicted on me. But also, actually, I found myself coming around to that sort of position by reading Aristotle, actually. As in, actually, you've got a teleology and you were born a man or you've grown into a man. Maybe you should think about that. So it's actually not as alien as you might think.
Okay. Yeah, and I mean, C.S. Lewis is only Christian Aristotle.
Yeah.
That's what he was really good at, was translating Aristotle into Christianity. And I think this is the point, that when the right completely lost its way on this, they started in, especially after the Reagan era, not Reagan's fault, but Reaganists' fault. That they started telling us that capitalism was the be-all and end-all. And it took me a long time talking to right-wingers to explain to them, no, prostitution is capitalism. Selling fentanyl is perfectly good capitalism. There's something above capitalism, which is basically this moral level. And when you speak of a moral level, what you're speaking about is something literally supernatural. You're talking about what nature represents that is above itself. And so if we are not going to talk about that, then we have no manifesto whatsoever, because our manifesto is you were made to be something better than what you are right at this minute. And there is a way to get to that. And yes, it's going to look different for you than it does for me. It's going to look different for the bricklayer than it does for the novelist. But still, it is there for every single person. And there are certain rules, like the 10 Commandments, that actually work pretty well in clearing away the debris so that you can then set about the positive thing that only you can do, which is make you yourself. this leads back to what you were talking about good men and women, and whether or not it is good men or good women who have to come first. I think that this is one of the big problems, that is what the church calls complementarity, that we are so linked together, men and women, that there can't be good women without good men, and there can't even be a definition of a good man until you have a good woman that you are actually trying to protect and nurture and bring into the world in the completeness of a single human being and of one flesh. The war on the genders is so important and so worth fighting back. And again, I want to fight it back without being unkind to gay people or anything like that. But I do want to make this point that this is where human beings live. They live at their heart in this relationship between a man and a woman. And it is the thing that brings us to full fruition.